Hello and welcome to Travel Days 2020, presented by the Italian National Tourist Board. I'm Huntley Mitchell, editor of Travel Weekly, and I'm here to tell you about a few house rules before we kick off proceedings. You'll notice in the top right corner a chat function, which you can use to communicate with your fellow attendees. However, our moderator will boot anyone who uses this inappropriately. One strike and you're out. If you want to share anything Travel Days related on social media, please feel free to use the hashtags Travel Days and Travel Days 2020. Finally, we also have a poll that we'll be conducting at the end of the session, so feel free to share what you think before you leave. Now, on with the session.
Hi everyone, thanks very much for having me at the Travel Days conference. My name's Karina O'Gorman and it's my pleasure to join you today from Intercontinental Hotels Group, where I look after our corporate responsibility, so looking at really how we can underpin our responsible business strategy in everything that we do. Filming this rather unusually from the UK, so hence the woolly jumper. It's obviously a bit colder here as well, and you get some rather unusual background as well. But thanks for having me. I'm sure it's been a great conference so far and lots of interesting speakers. And I think really the purpose for today is for me just to take you a little bit through why responsible business has gained in prominence even during such a difficult and trying year as 2020 has been, and really what we're seeing every day around the sort of environmental social governance agenda, and the importance for us to move forward and incorporate that into how we act and the actions that we take every day as an industry. So I guess for me personally, I've been fortunate to work in the responsible business space for many years across a variety of different sectors, both on the non-profit side and also on the sort of corporate side, working on their strategy. And I think what's been really fascinating for me is seeing just over the last few years quite how much the importance of the ESG or environmental social governance agenda has really gained in momentum, gained in importance. And we really see nowadays, and I'm sure the same for you as well, that those truly successful businesses have to be thinking about how they operate and what their sense of brand purpose is as well. More and more stakeholders are really turning to us to see how businesses are operating, and probably none more so than right now, as businesses around the world and us as people around the world are having to sort of respond to global events such as the COVID crisis, such as the racial equity movement as well. I think more than ever there's a real focus from our stakeholders to look at what we're doing to tackle these issues, and that there's an expectation that we can't be waiting for government to necessarily legislate. Businesses have to be stepping up and making sure we move that agenda forward. I think as well as that, that sense of brand purpose has probably also grown in need right now. Many of us have been questioning our purpose, thinking about what we want from our life, and that's the same as us as customers. We're perhaps thinking about the brands that we choose, the way that we live our lives. I guess COVID has really given us that opportunity to press pause and think about the world around us. As well as that, really, it's been the perfect stress test probably. So I think COVID has really shown if businesses truly are walking the talk, those commitments that we make, the way that we want to operate, the way that we explain to the world how we run our businesses, COVID has really put that to the test. And for us at IHG, it was really imperative that we embodied our responsible business principles, and actually our executive committee right at the start of COVID really put into place a set of high-level principles that would help guide us through these difficult decisions that we've had to make through the last few months, and I'm sure many of you are having to make such similar decisions as well. And for us, it was really about applying what we call the rearview mirror test, making sure that every decision that we take, every choice that we're having to make, we can do so being sure that we did the right thing, that we really put forward that we can be confident we were operating responsibly, we were making those right choices. And I think that was a really important thing for us to make sure that those principles were there as a guiding light, making sure that those difficult and challenging circumstances we were really embodying our beliefs. And actually what we really saw at the start of pandemic was that need to step up and really support immediately during that time of need. I'm sure many of your businesses too were also looking at ways you could give back. It was, we all saw firsthand quite how difficult the pandemic was going to be and the impact it was going to have on everyone's lives. So for us, what we did immediately at the start of it was to think about where could we really add value, where could we take who we are, what we do as a business, and translate that into helping others. So in Australia and other countries actually around the world, so also here in the UK, we're able to quickly offer our accommodation to frontline workers, military personnel, and vulnerable members of society such as the homeless. I know in Sydney one of our Holiday Inn properties was able to house the homeless, and actually also here in the UK we were working with the Greater London Authority again to house homeless. And that was something we'd never done before. It wasn't necessarily something we had SOPs and plans in place of how to deliver. But I think what we really took from that was this spirit of collaboration. And actually we were able to work collaboratively with those service providers to quickly create protocols, to work together to think about how you could house people in hotels, how you could make sure that they had the services they need, and they had a safe and secure environment. And I think actually what was really exciting was the innovative approach that was taken through this, that people came together and worked through finding solutions to this. And what we've seen from this is actually in the long run, many of those people that came and used the service were perhaps long time homeless, had regularly not wanted to interact with services or to be offered accommodation. And actually this was the first time they were able to engage with some of those harder to reach people. And we've seen some really great statistics and stories of the people that have now moved on to permanent accommodation, being able to sort of move forward in their lives as well by having that sort of opportunity for some safety and security for the first time. I know certainly for many of the homeless people that we talked to that were staying in our hotels, the fact that for the first time in the many years they had a safe space that was their own, they could lock a door, they could have a shower, they didn't have to worry about where they were going to sleep the next night. It was really quite powerful to see the opportunity that our sector could really bring during such a difficult time.
I have been for a few months now, sleeping rough down at Woolloomooloo. There's a stigma with homeless people the way they're looked at anyway, and I think that, I don't know, I felt actually that we're being looked upon as the people that carried it or dirtier, or so they put us up here at the Holiday Inn Hotel.
And what's it like?
Yeah, it's good to be off the street.
What's your favourite thing in the room that you're really enjoying, the nice little comforts?
The bed. The bed, because it's king size. I'm tall, so...
Like I said, yeah, wonderful hotel room, nice beautiful bed, 3 meals a day they're giving us at the moment.
It's put a big smile on your face.
Yeah, yeah, it's just great having somewhere stable for the next month or so, you know. And so many times have you come back to where you think you have your blankets of a night and they're gone, and so hard, it's so exhausting being on the street, you know, every day to try and get out and look for work or get a normal life back.
So, James, can you tell us a bit about your life before you got put in the Holiday Inn?
My wife passed away. That was kind of hard. Just kind of withdrawn from people and things like that. I was always working for 4 years ago. But yeah, being on the street is kind of hard to pull yourself out. You know, it is horrible. The concrete, cold, the wet winter rain. Yeah, the people like seeing you in that situation. That's really difficult. You know.
And as well as using our properties as housing for people, we also recognise that there was a huge demand and still sadly continues to be around access to food and food provision for many people. So we also thought about how we could play a role in that, and quite quickly found a few key partners to work with. So we were very fortunate that already in Australia we partnered with Oz Harvest, an amazing food rescue and food donation charity. So we took that learning and looked where else we might be able to find similar services or opportunities around the world, and we were actually able to partner with the Global Food Banking Network, the European Federation of Food Banks, as well as No Kid Hungry in the US, and between that sort of network of partnerships we're able to help food banks in 70 countries around the world to ensure that people had access to food in their times of need, whether that's colleagues that have been impacted directly in the hospitality industry or the wider community itself. And in fact, in Atlanta, our team there actually mobilised a direct food bank that they enabled all of our staff to volunteer in, to offer food parcels to those in need. And another great way to see sort of the community coming together and the using of our services immediately to really respond. I think what we've also seen at the outset of the pandemic has been it's not just COVID that can cause chaos, but actually the natural disasters sadly also continue during that time and can devastate entire regions. So we've always had a commitment to supporting people through natural disasters, making sure that our colleagues have support when they need it most. And we were able to sort of provide humanitarian aid, working with partners such as Care International and the Red Cross services all around the world to ensure that when natural disaster hits, even during a pandemic, we were able to provide on-the-ground assistance as well as financial support in markets such as Vanuatu in April. Recently in the US, we've activated for Hurricane Laura and Sally as well. And I think all of these things have really shown us that during this year, a lot of the social issues have really come to the forefront in that ESG agenda. Very early on at the start of the crisis, definitely the S in ESG, if you like, was very much of a prominence. But really the environmental sustainability piece and the consideration of climate change has never been too far away. And we're seeing that sort of rise up and be back on an equal footing when we think about the world around us and what's needed to be done. And I think for me that's really come about because often for many people climate change would feel so intangible. You understand that there's issues in the world, we understand that the climate crisis is coming, but perhaps it never felt truly tangible to people. They couldn't really understand it or touch and feel that it was happening here and now. It felt like a much more distant problem. But I think this year and what's happened has really brought to life some pure examples to really help people understand more that actually this is a crisis that is happening now, is something that we need to be thinking about. And many parallels have been drawn between COVID and climate change itself. I mean, here, in the UK, we've seen significant weather patterns. As I said, I'm in my warm jumper right now, but we had unseasonably hot weather earlier in the year, which probably should be cause for celebration as Brits, but actually really isn't a great thing for us. And it was the hottest spring, that we've ever had in 30 years, and it's ruined and devastated many farming crops with sort of 30% yield reductions on some of the key crops such as wheat. So that's going to push prices up, have more food scarcity, and really the farmers themselves, they're talking about climate change now. That wasn't necessarily something people would be talking about, but it's quite a reality for people to be seeing, our worst crop production in 30 years, all down to changing weather patterns and climate change. And in Australia, sadly, seeing the bushfires that hit those, I'm sure that the sentiment change that you were seeing, people talking about the bushfires much more and recognising the role that the change of climate is bringing around such fires, is really changing the fact that people can understand that climate change is devastating our world around us right now, and we need to be thinking about it for the long term. I think what was also interesting as the world came to a standstill during COVID, we could all sit at home and see nature revitalising, coming back to life. We saw populations recover. We saw animals suddenly inhabiting places where they'd deserted years before. We saw the wildlife returning to their habitats, and we saw smog reducing around Beijing and Delhi and locations around the world. So really it was probably the first time that we've all paused globally. We've come to a standstill, and you could really pinpoint how sort of human impact is affecting nature, biodiversity and the climate change as well. So I think all of those things have really brought this year a sort of pinnacle of understanding and recognising the sort of social and environmental concerns that we're all facing. And it's a real exciting opportunity as well, because I think that the conversation and the agenda is really changing, with more and more people talking about how businesses can really step up and help us to build back better. Everyone has paused, taken that moment, understood what's happening around them, and now it's really the opportunity to take action. Here in the UK, and a lot of the sort of leading agencies such as the UN are all using this terminology of build back better, and everyone's working really hard to make sure that as we think about recovery, we think about it in the right way, and we put sort of things like the Sustainable Development Goals or tackling climate change at the heart of how we build back, and really make sure that we do as much as we can to tackle those world issues as we build momentum. I think one of the real tangible areas in the long term where we have always had a great role to play, and hopefully will do again in the future, is around employability and skills building. We know that sadly COVID-19 has had a significant impact on jobs and livelihoods of so many millions of people around the world. But I think where we can look at hospitality and and what we do, we often have skills that are sort of soft skills and very transferable. And in fact, many people often started out in hospitality before they've moved into other industries. So it's really important that we think about what we can take from our skills programs that are already in place, look at how we can leverage them and widen those existing skills to offer people the chance to move into other careers if they need to in the short term, but hopefully also eventually come back to the industry as well. And it's really been finding ways to connect people. So we've been creating job portals and ways to connect our people with other opportunities, and really leveraging things like our IHG Academy programme that's always been there for skills building, early careers entry, and thinking about how we can do it differently, how we can elevate the social skills in there and those transferable skills. I think as well as that, what's been really interesting is thinking about what is the new world, what is the new normal when it comes to skills development and building opportunities for others and levelling those opportunities as well. Typically, we've offered work placements and internships, as well as apprenticeships, depending on market as well. And in fact, in Australia, we have a great partnership with OzHarvest, supporting their Nourish program, which enables disadvantaged young people to get training for kitchen certifications so they're able to move into the industry. And actually what's really exciting about that is it's not just about the pure hospitality skills they're gaining, but it's also around aspirations and the opportunity that it opens up for them as well. And I think it's, as I said, those soft skills and those real other opportunities that we wanted to make sure we don't lose, that otherwise it's an entire generation of people that have been left without access to job opportunities, and that vital kind of confidence building and aspiration raising as well. So what we've really tried hard is working with our partners to look at new ways to pivot to make sure people don't miss out on those chances. And a couple of examples to bring that to life. So in Egypt, we'd been working with Plan International, and there we had a group of young people that were newly looking for employment from quite disadvantaged backgrounds. They were due to do a work experience program with us in our hotels, but unfortunately due to the current restrictions, they weren't able to. So instead, we actually pivoted to a fully digital training course for them. So they've had one-on-one virtual training with different members of our team from the hotel, learning about all different aspects of hospitality and catering, and they've been able to then actually have a virtual graduation as well. And I think what's been really important for us for that programme is they've still been able to gain knowledge, skills and interest in employment for the future, and have something tangible they can put on their CV and talk about in potential interviews in the future as well. And I think that's been a really key driver for us to make sure that actually there's still opportunities for them. And what I really like about it as well is actually there's been some young people for whom going into a hotel may have been a step too far early on, and actually by taking it into the virtual realm and being online, which is often what they're more used to doing anyway nowadays, some of them were actually able to engage in the training where perhaps they might have been too fearful to take that next step. So for us, we've also found we're being able to extend our offering to those young people that perhaps might have been even harder to reach previously. And whilst it's important that we do keep our eye on the long term and thinking about the future, there are also some important things we can be focusing on in the short term and the near term. And I think there's some great roles that our industry and our businesses can play in tackling that. For me, there's some real short-term wins around the fact that, our industry is one that drives revenue. It can stimulate economic growth. We're such an important member of sort of the local communities in that sense. And as we start to recover, there's opportunities for us to really grow local market. And that can be through our sourcing, so working with local suppliers who provide the goods and services to our hotels. It can also be about driving further spending in the local areas. As more people start to stay in our hotels, they come to the different cities, they can obviously be using the services and surrounding facilities in the local community as well. And obviously employment, whilst not necessarily being able to offer the same level of employment that we used to, the hope is obviously that can continue to grow back, and we can still provide jobs to those as and when our businesses improve and pick up. There's a real spirit of caring and supporting each other in the way that we all work. And at IHG, our sense of purpose around true hospitality for everyone and that idea of being there to support and help definitely comes through. And we've seen it more than ever in response to COVID this year. And then building on from the societal issue as well, I think there's a real opportunity around building a greener future for everyone for the future. As a company, through our IHG Green Engage system, we've always been taking active steps to help our hotels measure, monitor and improve their environmental impact, looking at ways they can play their part in tackling climate change. And whilst COVID-19 itself has brought some short-term challenges to tackling these problems, particularly around waste, I'm sure it's something you're all seeing too, the rise in PPE and disposable items that have come with the focus around hygiene. And I know there are still opportunities though to look in the longer term. So we accept that there might be some short-term challenges in this, but what we make sure we do is think about what is absolutely necessary, and that where it is necessary, are there alternatives that we could bring in the future. I know at the conference previously, I think Leanne was with you talking about our announcement. We were the first hotel company to announce our transition to those bulk bath amenities. We do regularly apologise, you won't have the small ones to take with you anymore, but we do think it's a really important step in switching to that larger format product, so there's less plastics. And that's really just the start of our journey, and we really plan to continue that as we move forward, looking at how we can reduce some of those single-use items that will be there in the rooms currently, but also obviously have come in through COVID. But whilst there have been those sort of negative increases in the number of single-use disposable items such as PPE, we are actually also finding some opportunities through what we're going through as well. So we've seen that we were able to pivot to a digital app for newspapers and magazines. We were able to progress that service a lot quicker than we were initially going to have. Saving sort of millions of paper-based products every year that were being used in our hotels, which has been great to see that sort of saving. And we've always had our IHG Greener Stay programme where you could not have housekeeping in your room to earn extra loyalty points and obviously reduce the environmental impact by less water and energy consumption through the housekeeping service. Well, interestingly, you'll see that many people are wanting housekeeping to visit them less during this time. You want to go in, find your room, and keep it as your space for the duration of your stay. So again, some of those sustainability behaviours that perhaps we were trying to encourage through programmes are suddenly becoming the norm as well. And equally with that, obviously a lot of items have moved to on request. I regularly used to laugh about how some of our standards or expectations that customers have had and guests staying in our hotels haven't changed for many years. The plastic cup wrapped in plastic was always my particular pet peeve, and particularly in the hotels in Europe. That was always there because that was what people thought guests still needed in their bathroom. But actually we've been able to remove that during this process, and it was something we were hoping to do anyway. So what we want to make sure is actually, is this an opportunity to challenge guest behaviour, to talk differently about how we travel and what we expect in our rooms, and look to incorporate some of those sustainable changes as well. There's great ways to be sort of telling that story to our owners and operators to say, actually, how can we use the cost savings that we need to make as also a way to have an improvement for our environmental sustainability agenda. For example, the assisted buffets that have now come into play, where people are serving you your breakfast now rather than a sort of help yourself. It's seeing significant reductions in the amount of food waste, which obviously has a cost saving for a hotel, but equally environmentally is a massive environmental footprint saving for the food that is usually produced and then wasted and disposed of through those processes. So it's again been around thinking differently about what are we trying to achieve, what is the new way of operating, and where can we see those environmental savings as well. And I think if every business is doing that and thinking about that in the round, it will be quite exciting to see what collaboratively we can actually move forward on the agenda in the future. And to really recognise that I think a lot of this is so grounded in science now as well, and that's a really important thing for us. Earlier this year we had our 2030 science-based target set and approved, which gives us our route map towards our carbon emissions reduction for the future. We have targets that we apply across our entire estate, and again, as I said, more than ever that's intertwined with the way we now need to operate in this new world. If you're cutting your carbon emissions, saving energy consumption, ultimately saving cost as well, knowing that energy consumption and utility bills are the second largest cost in running a hotel after payroll, it's going to be more crucial than ever to look at the affordability of green solutions if we're really to move the dial on this as a topic. So, I mean, what does that mean for us? I think as an industry, we've really got a great opportunity to take a long-term focus and think about the ESG agenda for the future, and think about ways that we can really help make that change. I think importantly, there's two key things for me. One is that we don't lose sight of goals. You know, this 2020 was really meant to be the decade of action. It was the UN SDGs, they were setting us targets for 2030, and this was really meant to be the push where we came together, thought about what we need to do to achieve change, and we shouldn't lose sight of that. Yes, we've got barriers to overcome and more to do, but I think it's really important that we still keep an eye on the long-term future. And I think importantly for that, and I think that's why actually I love being part of the hospitality industry, because collaboration sits really at the heart of how we work and what we do. But I think that collaboration is going to be even more important moving forward. We're going to need to be working with our peers, working together, working collaboratively, but also with governments as well, so that we can tackle these issues. They can't be done in isolation. And again, if we think about what we've learned from this year, the need to collaborate globally and interconnect is more important than ever. Earlier this year, Keith Barr, our CEO, actually attended COP26 meeting with lots of other CEOs of the UK FTSE business leaders to discuss about how you build sort of environmental sustainable economies in the future. So we're really starting to see again that ESG agenda, that combination of conversation with commerciality and good social and environmental governance coming together, and recognising that it's business, governments and the wider society bringing forward that change. And I think what's key to really remember here is, yes, we have been really hard hit as an industry, but we are really well positioned to drive this change, because I think what's really great is we are a global industry, we're a people industry, and quite frankly, at the end of the day, it is down to people that can truly be the drivers of change. To be in a more sustainable position in the future, we need to talk more, we need to share our ideas and innovations and work together to find those solutions. We can't isolate one business from the other. Everything is so intertwined with our supply chains, with how we operate. If we think about our industry as a whole, from the travel you're using to get to the hotel, to the services and leisure facilities you're enjoying outside of it, we are also interlinked. So I think more than ever, working together towards common goals is going to be really exciting for the future. So I can only thank you and the Travel Days and all the organisers for having sustainability and the ESG agenda as part of your conference, and that this important topic is being discussed and thought about. I'm only sorry I can't be with you in person, but hopefully we'll get to discuss this again soon. Thanks for listening.